The 16-year-old inherits absolute power. Within a decade, his mother is dead, his wife is executed. His advisors are forced to kill themselves, and the empire begins to fracture around him. This is usually explained as madness, but Rome had already created a system where one unstable ruler could decide who lives, who dies, and what reality looks like. The real question is not why Nero collapsed. It is why the system survived him. When Nero became emperor in 54 CE, he was 16 years old. He inherited not only power, but a structure designed to prevent power from appearing absolute. The Roman Empire still pretended to be a republic. The Senate existed. Magistrates functioned. Laws were debated. But real authority had long since concentrated in the office of the emperor. A system required a ruler strong enough to command obedience, yet restrained enough to preserve the illusion of shared governance. That balance was unstable. Nero's early reign was not catastrophic. Guided initially by advisors like Seneca and Burrus, he reduced taxes, avoided immediate purges, and maintained stability. The crisis did not begin with madness, it began with autonomy. As Nero grew older, he stopped deferring to institutional buffers and began exercising authority directly. As Nero exercised power more directly, suspicion replaced mediation. His mother, Agrippina the Younger, who had engineered his accession, became a liability once she attempted to retain influence. After a failed attempt to kill her through a staged shipwreck, Nero ordered her execution outright. The episode was not impulsive, it was calculated. The emperor could no longer tolerate a rival center of authority inside his own household. His wife, Octavia, was popular with the public and symbolically tied to the Julio-Claudian lineage. She was accused of adultery, exiled, and later executed despite widespread unrest in Rome. Her removal was not merely personal. It eliminated a figure whose legitimacy did not depend on Nero's favor. When the Pisonian conspiracy emerged in 65 CE, the response was systematic. Senators, equestrians, and officers were implicated. Many were compelled to take their own lives. Among them was his former advisor, Seneca. The message was unmistakable. Loyalty was no longer negotiated through status or proximity. It was conditional on survival within the emperor's confidence. These acts are often framed as proof of madness. They can also be read as the predictable outcome of a system in which the emperor's insecurity had no institutional counterweight. When suspicion cannot be challenged, it becomes lethal. This is where the structural tension surfaced. The emperor's legitimacy depended on three groups: the Senate, the army, and the urban population of Rome. Each required something different. The Senate demanded respect and the appearance of consultation. The army demanded payment and stability. The urban masses demanded spectacle, grain, and relief from taxation. Satisfying one group often alienated another. Nero prioritized the urban population. He invested heavily in games, public performances, and building projects. He performed publicly as a musician and actor, acts considered degrading for a Roman aristocrat but popular with common crowds. To senators, this was not merely eccentricity. It was a violation of hierarchy. Roman elites believed dignity sustained authority. Nero blurred that boundary. Then came the Great Fire of Rome in 64 CE. Large sections of the city burned for days. Whether Nero caused it remains disputed. What matters is the political effect. Disaster demanded blame. Nero responded by launching rebuilding projects and introducing new urban regulations, but he also sought scapegoats. Christians, a small and unpopular sect, were accused and executed publicly. The executions were theatrical. They demonstrated control, but they also exposed fear. After the fire, Nero constructed the Domus Aurea, the Golden House, a vast palace complex occupying prime urban land. In practical terms, it was a display of imperial wealth. Symbolically, it crossed a threshold. The emperor no longer appeared first among citizens. He appeared separate from them. At the same time, financial strain increased. Public spectacles and construction required revenue. Provincial taxation intensified. Military campaigns in Britain and the East continued to consume resources. When revolts broke out in Judea and later in Gaul, they were not simply reactions to Nero's personality. They reflected the widening gap between imperial demand and provincial tolerance. The army's loyalty, once secure, began to fracture. Roman emperors ruled because legions accepted their rule. In 68 CE, when the governor Galba rebelled in Spain, he did not defeat Nero militarily. He was declared emperor by his troops. Once that happened, Nero's position became mathematically untenable. The Praetorian Guard, responsible for protecting him, withdrew support. Without military backing, imperial authority dissolved instantly. Nero fled Rome and committed suicide. According to tradition, he required assistance to complete the act. His reported final words, lamenting the loss of an artist, to capture his self-image. But they also reveal the deeper misalignment. Nero understood power as performance. The Roman system required power as equilibrium. It is tempting to interpret Nero as uniquely corrupt or unstable. Ancient sources, especially those written by senatorial historians, portray him as decadent, cruel, and theatrical. Some of this is likely exaggerated. What remains undeniable is that Nero exposed a structural flaw in the imperial model. The emperor had absolute power, but no stable method of transferring or limiting it. Once legitimacy depended on military endorsement rather than institutional continuity, every emperor ruled provisionally. Nero was followed by a year of civil war, the year of the 4 emperors, demonstrating how thin the illusion of stability had become. Nero did not invent tyranny. He inherited a system where personal rule had republican constraint, but without openly admitting it. His reign forced the contradiction into view. Rome required an emperor, yet feared monarchy. It demanded obedience, yet resisted transparency about where authority truly lay. In that sense, Nero's downfall was not the failure of one man. It was the inevitable consequence of a political structure that concentrated power while denying that it had done so.